Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today, of course, you clicked on it, you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, you know that we're talking about this new Nomad palette. This is the Royal Europe palette, and if all goes according to plan, this video will be posted on the day this palette is launched, which is March 28th. The new Royal Europe palette will be available on the Nomad website just after midnight, so by the time you're seeing this video, the palette is already up for sale. This is one of their 15 pan palettes. However, this one is going to be a little bit pricier than usual because we have some multi-chrome shadows in here. So the Royal Europe palette is going to be retail priced at $57 US. Now I do have a coupon code with Nomad. They just offered me the chance to have a coupon code. It's not an affiliate code, so I don't earn any commission from it. It's just a chance for you to save a little bit on your purchase there if you want to. There are lots of other codes floating around too, but I just wanted to let you know I do now have a coupon code with Nomad. It's just my first name, Amanda. It will save you 10% on most things on their site. I do think that this palette will be included in what's eligible for coupon codes, so keep that in mind. Even though this is pricier, you can save a little bit with coupon codes. There is a lot to see with this beautiful jewel toned palette. We have some really beautiful packaging. Like I said, we have multi-chrome shadows. They are also offering the multi-chrome shades from this palette for sale for $12 each. The mattes will not be sold as singles, but you can just pick up the multi-chromes if that's what you're interested in, and I believe those will be $12 a piece for the multi-chrome singles. I have some finger and brush swatches. I have 2 looks. I have a lot to share with you, so let's start first by taking a close-up look at this palette and its packaging, because we have some really beautiful packaging on this palette. Very special, dimensional, just really unique packaging as usual. Nomad always keeps me on my toes. I love that. So let's look at the outside of the palette first. Looking at the front covers here, you can see it's the same type of artwork, just 2 different executions. Looking at the box itself first, we have a bunch of information on the back, including a little picture of the shadows, and it also makes clear here that this palette is both cruelty-free and vegan. So all my vegan friends out there, this one is good to go for you. The inspiration for this palette is just a collection of things. The colors are inspired by crown jewels, the imperial courts, royal ballrooms, and grand palaces of Europe, which is such a cool inspiration for this jewel-toned palette. This abstract jewel design on the front of the palette is created with these layers of cutout shapes. It gives such an interesting dimensional texture, and it reminds me of these Danish Christmas ornaments. I really like this. I think this is such a cool idea. I've not really seen makeup packaging like this before. It's incredibly unique, and I think that they could have done something a little bit more straightforward and it wouldn't have had the impact of this cutout and layered design. Next, we're going to take a look inside the palette. We have a nice big mirror, and then we have all 15 shades laid out basically in 3 rows. The top 2 rows are all true matte shades, and then the very bottom row has the 5 multi-chrome shadows. These definitely appear to be laid out in little trios: a gold trio, a green, a blue, a purple, and a red. These are all pretty rich, saturated jewel tones. Maybe that lightest blue, you could make a case for it being a pastel, but overall we have a lot of medium, rich, mid-tone, jewel tone type of shades. There are some deeper shades thrown in here, but in general, not a ton of variety of depth. It's definitely staying on that medium jewel tone type of color story. And as usual for Nomad, all the shadows have these cool prints. Next up, I want to show you some swatches of this palette. As usual, I'll show you both finger and brush swatches. Finger swatches on top, brush swatches directly below. That way you can see what these shadows look like with a few different application methods. Now for the swatches, I did fit all of these shadows pretty nicely all in one swatch together so that you can see the full impact of the color story. Don't be fooled by some of these brush swatches, particularly the greens and blues. I know they look a little bit light or a little bit patchy, but once these are blended and layered onto the eye, the performance is really, really impactful. I want to show you some close-ups of these swatches so that you can really get an idea for the textures on the skin. I couldn't squeeze all the names in to label the swatches here. Some of these have some pretty long names, and the font I had to use was so teeny tiny that it was basically illegible for some of the shades. Really, my only complaint about this color story is that some of the shades are maybe a little bit too close to one another. Namely, the two mattes in the green row just end up looking pretty similar, at least on my skin. Maybe they look more varied on other skin tones, but that's really my main color story complaint. Now I want to show you the multi-chrome shadows in a bunch of different lighting situations. I really find this helpful, particularly for shades like this that are quite shifty and will appear very different in different lighting. So first, this is just full studio lighting with my big old ring light, and now I'm going to turn it off in real time. I'm going to turn off my lighting setup so that you can see what this looks like with just a regular overhead light bulb. This is what it's gonna look like just walking around at home, at school, at work, wherever you're in an indoor situation. And I'm also gonna show you with a flashlight in a dark room how sparkly and shifty these shades really can be. This lighting also shows how transparent the base is for these shadows, which is not a bad thing at all because you can layer these if you put them on top of a colorful matte or even just like a black or white base. You'll really get to change the impact and change the underlying tone of these shadows. So I actually like how translucent, because I think it lends to their versatility. I love mixing my shadows. I'm sure you can tell by my tutorials and how I always am constantly mixing and layering my shadows. So shades like this are incredibly useful as toppers, as standalones, or even two of these mixed together, which you'll get to see in my tutorials. Okay, now you've seen the palette close up, you've seen the swatches. I want to show you two different eye looks using this Royal Europe palette. I had to try really hard to not use my most comfy comfort zone type of shades. That would be the reds and the purples is where I really gravitate towards. So I really try to stay on this side of the palette to push myself to use some of the shades that maybe intimidate me a little bit. So I'm going to show you these two different eye look tutorials, and I'll wrap up all my thoughts on this palette along the way. This palette is basically what I wanted the ColourPop It's a Mood Mega Palette to be. And don't get me wrong, I still love my It's a Mood palette, and I think that's a great option if you're not willing or able to drop $57 on a 15 pan palette. Totally get that, totally understand. I like how edited and condensed this is. This Royal Europe palette definitely goes for it on the jewel tones, and I am a huge jewel tone fan. As I mentioned previously, my main gripe is that I think the two matte shades in the green row are a little bit too similar, and they're also too blue for me. I wish that they were more of an emeraldy, evergreen type of color. I think that would differentiate them from the blues a little bit more and would just add a bit more variety to the palette. I'm biased though because I'm not a big blue fan, so the very bluish green doesn't appeal to me as much as an olive, an emerald, an evergreen might. However, I really, really like the green multi-chrome. It has more of a yellowy undertone and it mixes really well with the golden row. So I love that combo. I just wish that we saw a little bit more of that reflected in the green mattes. However, when it comes to performance, I really have no complaints. There's no shade that has underperformed for me. These blend together beautifully. They layer beautifully without muddying up the colors. They stay very bold and true to color on the eye, but they're not so bold and intense and overwhelming that they're difficult to work with or maybe too intense for somebody who's not super well versed in playing with color on the eyes. I think that these are just that right balance, that right midpoint. And I will say I've worn these shadows over the course of a couple days, and the wear time is also really, really great on these. I haven't had any issues with fading, fallout, creasing, all the things that you might expect to be an issue with really rich shadows such as these. Even this blue look, which I really packed on and layered on a bunch of eyeshadow for this look to get that intensity that I wanted, and it wore beautifully throughout the day. So I have to say, when it comes to quality and performance of the shadows, I'm incredibly pleased. I think Nomad just keeps getting better and better. Now, I'm rarely disappointed by them to begin with. I know some people didn't love the Romeo and Juliet themed Love and Death palette that came out earlier this year. I didn't really have a problem with that one, but I will say, quality-wise, I think people are going to be very, very pleased with this one because it is so smooth, so consistent across the entire palette. All in all, this is an incredibly smart release. The color story, that's this jewel toned, sort of grungy-ish rainbow paired with a bunch of multi-chromes, is very on trend. I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people. I love the packaging. I just think all in all, this is a smart release because it is interesting, unique, very user-friendly. While it is super colorful, it's not intimidating because of the way that it's laid out. And even for somebody who's not a huge color lover, these semi-muted, rich jewel tones are going to pair beautifully with the neutrals of your choice. So I just all around love this. I think it's incredibly useful. I see myself reaching for this time and time again on its own as a companion palette, and really just to stare at it and admire its beauty. And if you want to see this palette in its full glory before I messed up the imprints, you can see some pictures and video over on my Instagram page. Obviously, I really, really, really like this palette. When this first arrived, when the PR package arrived to me, I opened this up and I hadn't seen any sneak peeks or anything yet, and I literally had chills across my body because it is just so beautiful. And I love jewel tones. I love these shiny, shiny multi-chromes. The mattes are absolutely perfection. They blend like a dream. Just formula-wise, color story-wise, packaging-wise, this all really does it for me. I would say this is easily in my number 2 spot. This knocked out the Provence palette. I still love the Hudson Valley palette a little bit more. Maybe if this one had more green and less blue, it would have a fighting chance for first place, but this quickly shot to the top of the pile. I just think it is interesting and fun and useful and beautiful and rich and opulent, and I really, really like it. I think this is a great palette. It's an exciting palette, and I'm gonna calm myself down now and stop ranting and raving about this palette, but all in all, I really like it. I would love to hear what you think about this palette. Are you interested? Are you picking it up? Which shades are your favorites? Which eye look did you prefer? I always love to hear what you think about things too, so make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Definitely zoned out there for a minute. Classic. This palette will be this is so cute. I hope it doesn't get messed up because it's so textural. I'm gonna have to be very careful with it. I do store my palettes in their boxes though, so is that weird? I don't know. The boxes have lots of information and I use a lot of the info when I'm reviewing, and also it just helps them to stack all neatly, and if I have to transport them, I move a lot. My spouse is in the military. Is it a little crazy? I don't know, maybe. But it's what works for me. Blue, da ba dee da ba da. I sing that song in my head every time I use blue eyeshadow. Tell me you were a child in the 90s without telling me. I got my little blue earrings from my Etsy shop, my little blue tie-dye shirt, blued out. I'm not really a blue girl, so you know, really pushing myself. Anyway, having quite the time over here. I've switched up some things in my skincare routine, namely increasing the concentration of retinol that I use, and it has been an adjustment period, so my skin has not really been living its best life, which that's just the way it goes sometimes. Adjustment periods can be difficult, and my kid has been sick for like 5 days, so he's been home from school. It's just been bad weather, bad skin, sick kid, blah, blah, blah. But you know what cheers me up is really pretty eyeshadow palettes, so at least I have that going for me. And my son will be fine. It's just allergy season here, plus he goes to public school, so there's just always a little petri dish of viral kid snot there, so you know, sorry, that was really gross. But he'll be fine. I got him, don't worry. I made him a really good grilled cheese, so that's all you really need. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. I'm always just glad when you're here. I'm always glad when your cute little face shows up and leaves me nice comments and lets me know your thoughts on things, and I just appreciate you being here, and I love your face, and I'll see you real soon. Bye bye now. Bye bye.